Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Retrospective. The Retrospective is a podcast between Peter and myself. We're both engineering leaders and we're producing this podcast for other engineers and engineering managers, engineering leaders who are interested in maybe what we have to say or maybe not. And the reason it's called the Retrospective is Peter and I both share a weekly newsletter and that we're publishing. And as part of that, then we actually have this podcast where we kind of digest what we've written every week. So that's really what this podcast is all about. This week, it's really focused on Peter's series about getting hired as an engineering manager. And this week's is really focusing on the interview process, and it's an epic.
Hey there, listeners. This is future or present Peter coming to you from the editor's room with a quick update. The discussion back then with Jeremy was so overwhelming that we ended up with our longest recording yet. To keep things digestible, we've split it into two parts. What you're about to hear is part one, with part two following up soon. So sit back and enjoy this first half of our conversation. And now, back to Jeremy.
You've been really busy, Peter. I think this is one of your longest articles so far.
Oh yeah, but it's a result of weeks of work. Like I was late with it. According to Ghost, it's 19 minutes to read, which is crazy. It's like a short book.
Well, it's great because this is part 4 of your getting hired as an engineering manager, and it's all about interviewing, which I think it's hard to do a short article about interviewing. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, thank you very much. I worked a lot on it. I think this was the article where I got the most feedback also, not just from my co-author Peter Battit, who helped a lot with confirming some of my advice or challenging some of the points I made. He's an independent recruiter now, and he has a lot of experience from the past also, and nowadays also how the market is different. And also from one of my ex-colleagues, one of my friends, he looked at it and he's engineering manager, and he gave some advice or raised some very good questions that made me change a bit the article.
Well, I'd love to, as we go through it, I'd love to hear the kind of the things that moved your position as you were from your initial draft to what came out.
I can explain that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, well, walk us through, sort of give us the cliff notes of what what's your advice around interviewing as an engineering manager.
Okay, well, that's a big cake. Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm not gonna read out the article or tell everything, but if I had to summarize, like you're going to an interview or in a process and you have 5 minutes I have 5 minutes to give you some advice. I would do, I would emphasize the preparation part. You really need to know the job post that you're applying to. It's hard because you're probably applying to a bunch of posts and job posts, and you have different, you're at different stages at different companies. Before you get into a discussion with a company, refresh your memories and understand. I wrote about this in the applying article that companies, when they open a position, they have a problem that they need to solve. And the way they can solve it, they decided, is to hire someone. So you need to understand from the job post, what is the problem that they have? Are they growing? Are they have a problem with their product? Are they, I don't know. There are numerous reasons why they are looking for a new manager. And if you can get to this reason somehow, then you're in a much better position, because you can shape your preparation in a way to show how you're fitting into this job. Why are you the answer to their problem? So study the job post and think about ways you could be a perfect fit for this job. Usually what people advise is that look for an unfair advantage compared to others. It's hard to find, but maybe you had some very good experience when you were hands-on or coding with a part of their stack. Maybe you're a long-time user of their product. Find something unique and something that you can share also in the interview. You need to research the company also, like basic stuff. What is their product? How are their business-wise? Are they a startup, scale-up, stock exchange company, public company? What are their main competitors? How are they more or less? Are they like the market leaders or new challengers? what is roughly their staff size, what other current openings they have now. You can check it on LinkedIn or their company website. So just have a basic understanding of the company, how who they are. The reason for this is twofold. You can ask better questions because you're not going to ask the basic stuff, and also it's going to show your engagement that you're excited about and interested about the job.
Yeah, and I would definitely say, like, for example, when we worked at Dashlane, there was two important things about people that interviewed at Dashlane. One was, did they use the product? So did they research? And so that's part of that whole part you're talking about, knowing the company and research. But the other one was, does this person understand security? Do they understand the fundamentals of security? And so whatever domain a company is in, don't just familiarize yourself with the company, but actually get up to speed with their kind of the general business area. I think that's vitally important.
Yeah. Like it can really make or break an interview. Yeah. No, that's a good addition. Thanks.
Yeah, and some interviewers might actually have it as part of their criteria that they're testing you on.
Yeah, but it's easier because then it's usually explicit in the job post, but it's more tricky when it's not so explicit. But it can really give you a big advantage or help your chances if you're getting familiar with the. And these are not like rocket science stuff. Like if you never worked in a security company, arguably a half a day of research can get you a lot of information.
Just know the jargon and so on.
Main things to pay attention to, ways they look at some certifications.
And I know that we seem to mention it all the time, but this is a really good example of asking ChatGPT to, what are the key things about the security domain that I should know about? And you could maybe prompt it with stuff related to, if it's a company that's doing password management, for example, then you could prompt it particularly with that. And it might talk about zero knowledge architecture and so on. And so that's a really good use of AI for this kind of preparation part.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. I have this joke that the A in AI is average. And in this case, if your knowledge on an area is below average, then AI can help to bring it up to average.
100%. Yeah. Same if it was a point of sale till thing and you didn't know anything about like that whole business, right? Boom.
Yeah. Or anything hardware related or whatever. Okay. So a lot of preparation about the company and about the job post. Internal preparation also.
Peter, just one more question on the preparation about the job and the company. When you and Peter have been writing this series, what's your take on, like, should we be doing more preparation than we used to do 3 or 4 years ago? Is it the same? Is it, I probably have a hypothesis myself on this, but I'm just curious what how the needle has moved on this preparation.
This specifically didn't come up, but I can deduct the answer of different discussions. The market moved in a way that's more preferable for companies. Like this is really a tight job market for engineering managers who are looking for a new job. That means that any kind of differentiation you can get, anything that's unique, that puts you a little bit above the rest, is worth investing into. So yes, I think so. Preparing better and preparing in a way to find something unique, something that only you can say, or you are one of the few people who can say it and connect you to the company or to the product. That can be a big advantage.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're back to normal. That's the reality of like my early. I remember like coming out of university and having just you prepped for every interview because there wasn't that many, and it's when you went for a job and you were getting into the interview stage, you were super hyped and you put a lot of effort into it. And I remember like a few years ago, you were just fending off interviewers. You were trying to get out of, like you had so many people approaching you.
and processes were different. It were about recruiters trying to convince you just to jump on a call to
Yeah.
an interview and just give a chance to the company.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I remember as a hiring manager that I prepared for interview in a way to find ways I can sell the company
Yeah.
to the candidate and find things that can connect the candidate to the product or the company, because I really wanted to try to catch their interest.
Yeah. Now,
But yeah,
as a
but
hiring manager, I think well, I need a few more comparison candidates, and I want to, like, hold out. I'm not going to pick the first one that comes across my desk. I'm going to take a lot
yes.
longer. I'm gonna like maybe stick 3 or 4 into the final stage.
Yep.
And
Yeah, that's. I think we wrote this maybe in this article or a different one. I think it was this one at the end that forget the expectation of a 2-week process. Like processes are much longer now, and yes, it's possible that you're qualified in every sense. All your interviews
Mhm.
went great, and at the end, you will get an email saying that the company chose someone else, because this is, as you say, radically different now. Now, company, it's normal to take 2, 3, 4 candidates till the last round. It's a big investment from the company, but on one hand, they have a lot of candidates. On the other hand, companies have a huge risk now hiring someone. Their budgets are much smaller. They cannot make a mistake. Like if they hire a leader that doesn't work out, they burn their budget and they are much more behind. They need to, they're struggling to be profitable or stay profitable, and they cannot really make mistakes. So they invest all the interviewing time and everything to be able to choose from more than one candidate to hire.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and the engineering manager role is a particularly critical one, because it affects an entire
Yes,
team.
it's a multiplier role.
So yeah, I mean, you really have to stand out. You have to do the work and so on.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so back to preparation, but this is a good point and good question. The other part of preparation is what you do internally, like about yourself. The first part of it is have an introduction ready. Like when I started to interview, and it's not just interviewing, but also on from the other side of the table when I'm introducing a company to a candidate, I felt like my text is boring because it was the 5th, 6th, 7th times I was hearing myself saying it. But this holds someone back. Like, yes, have a perfect introduction, practice it, say it out loud. It's gonna feel a bit awkward that you're repeating yourself to someone new, but still, this introduction is important to cover your professional past.
Yeah. I think you need to provide context about yourself. Um, there's a danger, which is you take too long. So
Oh
you've
yeah,
got to,
yeah,
that's why you
yeah.
need to practice it. As you say, you need to have a really, short.
Very short
Yeah.
versions, 3-5 minutes maximum.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say is, and I think you put it there, add a minimum amount of personal detail to help break the ice and build a human connection. Like I always start with, I'm Jeremy. I'm where I live, a bit about my family, how I ended up in France. I'd provide a little bit of, I try and have a human connection. I'm not a robot. I'm a father. I have maybe some other interests and so on. And I think
Yeah,
that's an important part
this
of,
is very
yeah.
useful advice. Yeah, it can help in a lot of ways. Like it's breaking the ice a bit. The other person, the interviewer, is equally stressed. Maybe not as much as you are, but still very stressed because it's a high risk decision, and judging someone's capabilities is always stressful. Making a decision if yes you're good enough, no you're not good enough for the job. So by adding some personal context, building a human connection, it really helps easing the situation, and that's gonna help both of you to have a more normal conversation and not like a test situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, adding some human aspects, it's important.
And I think then the other part of the advice on this you talk about is, the answering the killer question about, why are you wanting to leave where you are,
Yeah.
and so on. I'll let you talk about that, but I
Yeah.
think it's a vitally important.
Yeah, and this can be a great like as a hiring manager, this was a great test for me to see how they discuss leaving their current company, or why they are looking for a new job, or why they were laid off, or why they quitted. It's really, really tempting to talk back about your previous company because you're frustrated about something that was not going as well. Maybe your manager was an asshole. Maybe it's you couldn't get anything done, and maybe your last half year was nothing but frustration. Still, if you can talk about this situation with some empathy, distancing yourself, understanding the other side, and explaining in a way that gives a chance to the other person who's not present in the interview to defend their actions, that shows a lot of maturity and empathy that interviewers are looking for. So my advice, even if you left your company in bad terms, don't lie. Like, don't say that it was all rosy. You can say that I don't know, I ended up laid off for this or that, or we decided that we cannot work together. That's a nice euphemism for being fired, and it's not lying. But try to come up with a permissive way of yeah, maybe they were right. Maybe I was not a good fit for the company because I believe more in empowerment and they believe more in command and control, and they are the leaders of the company, so they are risking the company to make it successful. It's their decision.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm always focusing on the positive. I think the other thing that,
To summarize
no,
5 minutes of what I was talking
yeah,
about.
no, but I think the other bit that's really important on this is there may be things that people see in your CV, whether you changed jobs a couple times, did 1 year here, 1 year there. Be prepared to explain that.
Yes.
Just my own personal experience, I worked at a number of startups that that hit the wall, one after the other, and one due to COVID, one sort of in the post-COVID, like they did, like they died. They kind of didn't die, but they really hit the wall after that. You've got to be able to answer that because people look at your CV and they will ask, hey, we're looking for someone here who wants to be here for a lot longer, but you've only spent like a year and a year in these places. What happened? They will ask. Someone was
Yeah,
going to ask.
this is
Yeah.
a good advice, and the other side of it is true also. Like, if you only spend like all your professional career is at one company where you spend 15 years, that raises some questions also. The point you're making, and it's a great point, is that look at your CV. What are the questions you wouldn't like to be asked? And think about what you would answer to those questions and prepare those answers. Because on the spot, it's much harder to come up with a balanced way of answering a difficult
Yeah.
question. If you prepare in advance, and it's not going to be visible that you're saying a prepared answer,
Exactly.
but it will help you a lot.
And by the way, I do think that if you feed your CV to ChatGPT and say, what are the kind of questions that
It could have been a ChatGPT.
I hate saying it, but like there's just a bunch of
You're right.
lightweight
That's
things
right.
that you can do that, as you say, the A is for average, but it can just, like it might spot something in your CV that it thinks it doesn't like, and it might be a false positive, but
It's not just A is average. It's also, I don't know, good abbreviation for that, or good first letter, but it's objectivity also. It's relying on mass knowledge, or on the canon. I don't know, like, what that I'm not seeing because I'm too close to my CV.
exactly.
It's my personal history.
Yeah.
Give an external view, and then you can prompt something like, what are, I don't know, 5 questions that would be difficult to answer for me
Yeah.
based on this TV.
Yeah.
Maybe I
Yeah.
will try it after this call. I'm very curious.
Yeah.
Nice to do. Yeah. Okay. So prepare with the intro and some difficult questions. The other part of preparation that's critical, I think, is to have a list of stories that you can rely on. And this can be also extremely useful in interview situations. Stories can be things that show a problem or opportunity where you took some actions and have some demonstrable results. You should have stories about people management. You should have stories about execution management. Stories like, I don't know, all kind of stories from your past that you can pull out answering different questions. And the trick here is that even if you don't 100% answer the question and say something a little bit different, most of the time you can get away with it. For example, let me find a good example. I don't have a good story that I can pull out, so I need to think about it. But a typical question can be, I don't know, tell me about a time when you had to balance technical depth with feature development. That's a very classic question. And maybe you don't have a direct answer to this, but maybe you have a story where you had, for example, you had a marketing announcement that you were building up, or a conference or some event, and you had 2 months to deliver a new feature that was very important for this. So you can pull out this story and say, okay, adapt the story a bit. You can say that we knew that the application needs a refactoring, but we made the decision that we can get by 2 more months and focus on delivering this feature to meet this important deadline. And then we scheduled, I don't know, 1 month of intense rewrite. And you can make a whole story about this. My point is that your original story was about getting ready for a marketing launch and doing a quick sprint to deliver some dirty features that do the job, but you use this story to answer a question about tech debt.
Yeah.
And similarly, or on people management stories, like when you promoted someone, or when you had to fire someone, or hire someone, have these stories ready. I give a structure of the stories, like start with a hook explaining what you're going to talk about in very quickly. Describe the problem or the opportunity that comes up, or even if it was not you who identified it, it's fine if you work with your manager to identify it, or some external stakeholder. But the interviewers need to understand what was the problem that you're solving. Go into details about your actions and focus on what you personally did.
100%. Don't
Yeah,
skip on that.
exactly. And because you as a manager, you're used bringing up your team, and don't say stuff that I launched this, I did that. Because obviously you did it with the help of your team, but this is a different situation. You need to sell yourself. So it's perfectly fine to say that, I don't know, I launched this application, or I met this deadline, because it's implied that you control the team that had this achievement. So explain your actions and then show the results. Like as a result of your actions, I don't know, you met the marketing deadline, and you can try to bring in numbers. That's always helpful. Like you can say that this resulted in, I don't know, 2,000 new subscribers in one day, or I don't know, some even financial numbers are the
Yeah.
best. But yeah, any kind of data is good. But if you don't have it, you can use qualitative data also, like I don't know, developer experience based on the quarterly survey went up 5%.
Yeah. I would say this Peter's the framework that you're giving, Peter, to people is super important, because what some people may not realize, hopefully as a manager you do, and you worked in a company where you've been trained in kind of in giving interviews, because usually what the interviewers should have been trained in is, instead of asking hypothetical questions, they're asking situation-based questions to understand you. Tell me about a time when you had to face this, as you said, tech debt, balancing tech debt and new features, and they're actually looking at these actions and results, and so providing the scenario and everything else is super important. And
Yeah, thanks for the addition. This is, yeah, as an interviewer, I never use questions like, what do you think about tech debt? I always use very concrete behavioral questions, like, what did you do when you found tech debt? And I expect the same kind of questions. The reason is that everybody has an opinion on something, but I want someone who has some experience on
yeah, and I think that the really important thing, the other thing I wanted to emphasize is don't fake it. There's actually a couple of bits. Don't fake it. So don't, I think you can slightly stretch stuff, but be very, very careful, because this is the kind of thing that gets undone in reference checks later. The other thing I wanted to say is, when you do get hypothetical questions, because sometimes you get interviewers that don't ask great questions, use your stories. Don't go to hypothetical. Say, oh, let me link that to an actual experience, and that's way more powerful as an answer back, because otherwise you're just going to be lost in hypothetical blah blah blah. And then I think you planted an Easter egg in your series of articles about this in the section about CV, where you said, plant some breadcrumbs in your CV. And I think that this is these stories and the numbers should be in your CV. Talk about the results you had, talk about some of the things you did in the bullet points or whatever, so that it's all consistent and coherent.
Yeah. And to turn this advice around, anything that you write in the CV, be prepared to be asked about.
Yeah.
If you show some data or some projects in your CV, have a short story about that. How did that go? Why did you choose to do that? What was the team looking like when you achieved this feature launch or something? Have a story ready about all the stuff you write in your CV.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oftentimes interviewers, especially, they are not super inspired. They just look at your CV and they, tell me about when you launched that mobile application.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So these stories, and the more you can have, the better it is. Anytime you spend on it, it's very good because it can be used at every company. So it's not per company preparation, it's generic preparation that you can use at every company.
Yeah.
I talk a bit about technicalities. What you're sharing now, it's about questions, but this is actually one of the things that changed in the article based on feedback.
Interesting. Yeah.
This section about questions, it was much longer here. And based on feedback from both Peter and Ben, I realized that, because we started to discuss if this question is appropriate or not. Is it appropriate to ask about, I think the example was, I was giving an advice, something like, don't ask about things like holiday policy, vacation time, etc., because you might come off as someone who's not focusing on the right stuff. And what I had in mind is that this is not a good question in for example, definitely not for a leadership call, for an executive call. But the point of the feedback was that this is an important aspect for me. I need to know. So when can I ask if not during the interview? And it's a very appropriate question for the recruiter call. So based on this feedback, I restructured the article, and now I have good questions and typical questions for every interview stage, because they can be very different.
I agree. Yeah. Don't ask the exec about the company's, holiday policy or, something like that.
That's a sure way to piss someone off.
Focus on, each aspect of this is why the preparation is really important, because each aspect of each stage that you're going through, you're going to learn something different about the company. And
you can pile up on that. You can even reference to that, like on the executive call, you can say that, I don't know, I talked with the manager and he mentioned that there is this big project coming up. Can you tell me about how it fits to the business plans in the company? That's a very good question from an executive, and the executive is going to love you for asking this kind of question.
Yeah, execs like to talk. So, if you can ask them insightful
about
questions.
Big stuff. Don't ask if you're going to work on a Mac or a PC from a CEO.
Has happened, speaking from real life experience.
Wow.
The other thing I think is that because your questions tell the interviewer something about you, so it's also an opportunity for you to continue to demonstrate something about yourself in the way that you've prepared for the interview and the kind of questions that you ask.
But don't overdo it.
You don't try to be the smartest. Yeah,
exactly. Like don't. I don't have a good example now, but you know what I'm talking about. There's this typical example of, I'm asking a question in order to show how smart I am. And
Yeah.
Well, first of all, you're not, because the person you're asking the question from, they know this context because they live in it, and coming from outside, there's a big risk of you're just a show off and a know it all who doesn't take into consideration the experience they already have. And second of all, yeah, it's just boasting. Like, you're not curious about the answer, you're just asking a question to show your knowledge. So
Yeah.
it's a balance. But to your point, yeah, like genuine interest about like if we're talking about Dashlane, I think a good question from a candidate from a Dashlane executive would be, what are your steps? What are you doing against, you know, the password managers are more commoditized, like every like Apple is coming up
Yeah, but
out
as a
with their
password
password
manager, yeah.
manager. Yeah, like what is the strategy of the company to you know, stay relevant in this age? And I think that's this question is on the limit of being a bit too critical, but it's very good because it shows a good interest of the business where the company is working at and where you're considering joining.
Honestly, also, if you don't get a convincing answer from an exec on
Yeah,
those kind of
yeah,
strategy things, then I would start to question, what's going on here,
yeah, yeah. I mean, people often forget that the interviewing is not about convincing the company that they should hire you. It's about figuring out if you're a good fit for both
Mm,
ways. Like it's I the dating analogy is a bit overused, but it's very similar. Like you're entering into a long-term relationship with another entity, with a company in this case. You really need to find out as much as you want to ensure that it fits your preferences. And sure, a lot of people who are looking for jobs are a bit more desperate now because they are running out of their savings and they really need a job. But still, you shouldn't forget this aspect. Like you're gonna be miserable if you end up in a company that's not the right fit for you.
yeah. Well, everyone has a different tolerance of that.
And every situation is
Yeah.
different. Like if you need to pay the rent, then yeah, sure, you have to compromise.
Yeah. Moving on, maybe you want to just do the research part. I guess this we
Yeah,
talked a little bit
I
about
think we
this already.
mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just go into a bit more details about and a checklist of
Yeah.
questions to know before going into the interview. I think it's more like covering the bases, like the product they make, how they make money, B2B or B2C. What is the rough size of the current
Yeah.
stuff? We mentioned this earlier in the call, but these are just covering your basics and give you an idea of what question to
I
ask.
think you almost need to do this before you do the questions, but yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe the order is not
Yeah.
right.
No, it's all right.
And then I give some advice on technicalities. I don't think I will go too
No.
deep into this. These are I during these articles I was debating in myself, like, is it common sense what I'm writing? Like, do these need to be spelled out? And arguably, this is an area where a lot of the things that I'm advising should be common sense. Like, I don't know, don't take an online call from a bus stop. But this is actually it happened. Like that was one of Peter's feedback and a story that it happens more often than we think. And it's crazy. Like, don't have your camera turned off in an interview. That's in a situation where you want to build trust and build a relationship. Don't do stuff like this. So yeah, some of these technicalities, both for online and in-person interviews, these are a bit
Yeah.
trivial,
I,
but
I think
I think it
yeah, I think I would definitely add one here. Something that people do when they do, even if they're joining from home, is they'll put like an image behind of something that's
okay.
not their real background, and or they have a super blur from, like, in Zoom you can set the blur really blurry behind you,
Yeah.
and so there's been some research about that, and it makes you less trustworthy
Yeah.
because people are wondering what's behind you. So if you're on an Apple computer, you do have, like, on the camera itself, like, you have the ability to set like a bit of like bokeh type blur behind you, which actually both you and I have in the video podcast. You can see that we have it, but you can see our background. And so I would strongly advise you at that to just have very light blur if you're going to blur, but don't hide what's behind you. There's always something in the interviewer's mind about you, and I've experienced this myself. And maybe I'm biased,
This is my point I'm about to make.
yeah.
Yeah, but
No,
continue.
but there's been some research about this, and
I know.
it makes you untrustworthy. And I think that
Yeah,
everything you can do in a video interview to
yeah. But this is a very good advice, and I think it applies to, I don't know, 95% of people. There are situations, for example, you're a stay-at-home mom, you don't have that much money and your flat is a mess, or there are a lot of situations where people believe that it's not showing their best selves if they unblur the background. I guess I agree with you. Yeah, it's probably a minority, and even in those cases, try to find a way to find 1 square meter of background
yeah,
that's
jerry rig
more
something,
acceptable. Yeah,
put a
yeah,
pile of
yeah, yeah,
books
yeah.
or a box or something, sit with your back to the wall, so you just have a
Yeah,
neutral
exactly. Yeah,
background if you're struggling or whatever. But just yeah, I think it's also just the don't I think in an interview situation, don't have the laptop on the table pointing up at your nose or from the side. Just like do the really basic things to make yourself
yeah,
look like you're talking to the person. It's like move their camera, move their window with their image up to the top of the screen. So when you're looking at them, you're looking into the camera.
yeah. That's
Um,
I did that because I had a horrible experience in an interview situation once when the candidate had a multi-monitor
oh,
setup, and we've heard this call, and
I've seen it multiple
it
times. It's really annoying. Yeah.
really annoying. And I think I've been to situations where the interviewer pointed out to the person, it was a panel interview, that could you set up your camera in a way that, because it's really, this is what you see. Like,
Yeah.
how can you have a normal conversation with someone seeing it when they're obviously trying to look at you, they're looking at your image, but they don't realize that they don't have the empathy to understand that from the other end it looks horrible and it doesn't help building a connection.
Yeah.
I guess it's helpful as an interviewer for me because I know that this person is lacking empathy, or
Yeah.
yeah, I can, some of it might be biased, but I'm okay with it.
So what I would say is that there are people who listening to this will say, "Oh, in my day-to-day work, actually, it's bad to have like the face-on camera when I'm looking at. I don't want to look at myself, and when I'm pairing
You
with
can
other
hide
people, it
yourself.
feels like more if we're side by side, then I can look over at the camera, but I'm looking at the screen. Fine, okay, that can work in a pairing situation, but this is an interview. Make the extra effort, and you're going to talk about in-office interviews in a second, but just as much as you make an effort to go in an office to see someone, you've got to do that when it's online.
Yeah, and yeah, the counter argument would be, but I want to show myself and I don't want to play the game and fake. You need to play the game. Like this is about selling
Mhm.
yourself, either if you like it or not. It's about, yeah, the person doesn't know you. They're gonna judge you based on what you're showing in this half an hour, and nothing else. If you don't give a little bit of effort to present yourself, then
I'll
that
say that
works with you.
most of the engineering managers I know and have interviewed haven't generally fallen into many of these
No,
things. It's mostly
that's why I think
engineers.
this is common sense.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah, that's a good point.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's
But
so part of our audience.
yeah, yeah. But then you do have engineers who are trying to take that step up, that are a team lead or whatever, and they're going for that engineering manager job. And
These advices of these technicalities are relevant for any
yeah,
position. If you're interviewing for a CEO or a receptionist, going through this list, a lot of it is common sense, but maybe there is one or two that you didn't think of. This can apply.
exactly.
Yeah. And in-office interviews, those are very, very common sense also. I think like be really sure how to get there, pay attention to timing, leave a few minutes to get from reception to the place, have something to write
Yeah.
with, and
Yeah.
yeah, basic stuff.
I think that people are really out of practice on this one, because I think it's still
Yeah.
more efficient and easy to do like a video call. And the thing that I would say is, this is great advice. Just follow it. I think it also can be helpful if you have a interviewer that seems unprepared. Yeah. I remember 10 years ago, I used to take copies of my CV,
Mhm.
and just things like
Yeah,
that.
that's
And
a good
I had
idea.
a little
Yeah,
file. I had the
that's
job
good.
description. I had all the stuff, and I could just refer back to it. So when I asked a question about the job, I'd open it up and say, in your job description, you have this,
Yeah,
right? And
shows preparedness.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's really important. And also, like, take extra copies of your CV. You can give it to the interviewer if they're like, oh, because like nowadays they're taking their laptop probably in, and they hopefully have your CV on their screen and not something else, like Slack or something else. But like, yeah, it can be helpful to just be overly prepared for the in office. The other thing I wanted to say here is that when you are doing these interview process and the job requires some element of being in the office, and we're going to talk about the different rounds now, if you get to the point where you've never been to the office, ask but you're in your job, you're going to be expected to be in the office.
Super good advice.
Ask,
Yeah.
which of these interviews will I get to meet the team? At what stage will I meet the team and come to the office? You can ask the recruiter. They'll go out of their way to make it happen. Not every company thinks about that because they're just trying to get, they're juggling a million things, and it is more efficient to jump on a video call. And they might be in the office, but half the time they're probably on video calls anyway. So ask to make sure you get an office interview, a tour of the office, maybe a chance to meet some
Super
team
important.
members.
Yeah. I even have a story about this. I had an ex-colleague, a developer, who went to another company and didn't do this check, despite knowing that he's gonna have to work from the office, and found out on his first day that half of the desks are back to the windows, so it's really hard to see what's on your screen. The office it really had a bad vibe, and he said the worst thing, there were like 20 developers and one bathroom for everything. Very small, almost, I don't know, too materialistic things, but those things are going to impact a lot your
Yeah,
day-to-day life. Like, how is the office kitchen? Is there a community
yeah,
area? Yeah, how many bathrooms there
yeah,
are? Is there a shower? Like, for me, I remember a long time ago when working from home was not an option. I love to go to work by bicycle. It was very important and very almost, I felt almost selfish and struggled how to ask. But to have a shower in the office for these companies, because this is what I like to do. Like I go a bit earlier, I take a shower, and I'm fresh and clean at my desk by 9 a.m.
yeah,
or whenever I need to start.
yeah.
These are important things, and asking for an in-office tour, it's the best way to figure this stuff out.
Yeah, plus the casual conversation as you go around, maybe you're introduced to a few people, gives you a chance to
Yeah.
get to know people, and gives you a sense of of people. So I think don't if you're expected in, don't skip it. It's like
Yeah, yeah. Push for it, and to your point, yeah, the recruiter is going to make it happen, especially if you're expected to work from an office.
yeah, yeah. Also, if they don't make the effort to do that, kind of a danger sign, and
Maybe they have something to hide. Yeah,
or just you're a cannon fodder candidate. You're like they have a candidate in mind that you're column fodder. The comparison candidate, but they know they've chosen.
yeah,
But
like
they're
the
not.
plan B
They don't
or
care about
yeah,
you. I mean, seriously, if they don't make
yeah.
an effort for every candidate, yeah. The other thing is, I've been on the other side of this. I've made the mistake
Mhm.
of interviewing people fully on video, and for an in-office job or like a hybrid job. And we had a great candidate that we really loved, and we realized that they weren't fully convinced about us. And there was kind of like this kind of, oh my goodness moment where like, well, of course they haven't met their team, they haven't been in. So when they were after they'd done the final interview, we organized a lunch and a tour of the office where they had lunch with the majority of their team, and that changed the dynamic completely, because we went from being I think second place in terms of the offers they had to being the first choice. So this is important, and
Yeah,
still,
it's funny because back at one of my previous companies, we were still very small, so it was critical who is the next hire. Like if your team is only 5 people, the 6 people is going to make a huge difference than if it's a 20 people team. So we had an interview stage in Greenhouse that was the restaurant interview. And oftentimes we just went out for a beer after work, and anybody could join from the company. We were just a few people. It gave a great chance for the candidate to get to know the team a bit in a more relaxed environment. We were all geeks, so we had a lot of topics to talk about, and it really helped. And most of these are, to your point, it helped us more than the candidate probably. It was in situations when we wanted to convince the candidate that this is a good company. Sure.
yeah. Plus, maybe there's a warning sign of the candidate at that informal stage, and then you can still take some kind of action. So I think it's an important one.
Yeah.
Right. Do you want to run us through the rounds of interview, the typical rounds?
Yeah. I mean, Kramer, before this is a selection of possible interview rounds. Especially in this stage, you might not have all of them. You might have more from one, less from another, depending on the position, the company. I just wanted to include typical stages, so there is some advice on everything. So starting with the recruiter call, that's probably your first interaction with the company, live interaction. It's when the recruiter is calling you about your application. This was a very important feedback that I got from Peter writing this article. It confirmed one of my suspicions, but it made it much more explicit that you really need to work on building a relationship with your recruiter. I even say your recruiter. It's obviously the company's recruiter, but you need to realize that they are on your side. They are successful if you get hired. They probably even have some bonuses if they can hire more candidates quickly. So treat the recruiter treat everyone with respect, but treat the recruiter with a lot of respect and empathy and helpfulness and flexibility and everything. I hear all these stories on Reddit and everywhere that, I had this horrible recruiter call. It was so disrespectful. She was asking questions about, I don't know, record algorithms, and it was clear that she doesn't know shit about that. I gave her this advice and she didn't want to accept it because it was not what was written on her paper, etc., etc. That's a really, really bad attitude to have. Like, you really need to work on building a good partnership, because they're gonna be your advocates inside the company. Like they gonna represent you at the company. They're gonna debrief people after the calls. They're gonna do what they can to reschedule interviews for you. They're gonna represent your counteroffer or your negotiations in the company. It's really, and it's not hard to do, because a lot of candidates don't realize this, and they look at recruiters as an annoyance that they need to pass so they can talk with the like-minded engineering folks. Being very kind and respectful and looking at it as a partnership gives you a huge advantage to other candidates.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that recruiters are juggling a bunch of different people. So be really responsive, and one thing that can work quite well is, depending on the recruiter, they might you might be able to switch to WhatsApp or text messaging or something like that in between you. Which, frankly, from their perspective, and you're jumping on short calls and things like that. So really be as available as you can to them. If they call you and you're in a meeting, send them a message immediately, call them back, like be a great communicator. And the other thing I wanted to add about Recruiter is that when I do a debrief call, I don't think everyone does this, but when I do a debrief call, the recruiter has a vote for that person, for the hire as well. They always ask the recruiter their feedback, and I treat their feedback as much as the others because they actually talk to the person more than anyone else.
Yeah.
No,
I think it's a good advice. There's a risk of this, and I'm pretty sure you didn't mean it like that, but I want to point it out that especially in this frustrating climate, you might get tempted to, find a recruiter on LinkedIn and start to send direct messages about your application. Why is it slow? Why are they ghosting?
No.
Don't do that.
No,
there is a
don't do
boundary
that.
that you shouldn't cross. Don't be a creep.
Yeah.
But to your point, like if they give you your number, or if they if they connect you on LinkedIn, or like if they initiate a new channel, then by all means use that channel and be very responsible.
Yeah, I mean, you can. It's very easy to say, obviously you're replying on emails or whatever, but if it comes down to scheduling or whatever, and they're kind of, you can see that you can just say, hey, if it helps you, you can just drop me a text message.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a great way to introduce this new, more interactive channel and be out of your way to be helpful. Is that, I don't know, I'm traveling tomorrow or going to be in a conference or something, but here's my number. Feel free to just drop me a message and I immediately step out and call you back or something. Just, be the recruiter is your partner. Yeah. They're working for you, not to you. Yeah, and this is the call, and that was some debate with my co-author also, and some feedback about the compensation. The common sense advice on negotiating is to delay saying a number as much as possible, because by delaying when you disclose your number, you can gather more information, you can have a better way of saying how much you're asking for. It's common sense in negotiation. That's why if you go to the bazaar, you question how much it's worth for you, and because you need to push saying the number to the other party. This doesn't apply here. Especially in this climate, if you say something like, oh, my expectations are getting fairly compensated based on the market and my experience and the value I can provide to the company, which I'm ready to discuss after I had a chance to better understand the company. It sounds great. I had something like this in my first draft. It really doesn't work, especially not in this climate. Like, you just really need to say something in when the question comes up, and it's going to come up in the recruiter call or hiring manager call later, depending on the company. The advice is that say a range, don't say a number, and say a big range, and say a range that you're really okay accepting it. Set the minimum of the range to an ideal company where everything turns out pink and rosy, great team, great product, etc., and set a maximum to a very shitty company, bad job, but you're still okay to take it, but they need to pay you. So an amount that you're okay to accept an offer if they pay that much. So have this big of a range, and you can rely on this when at the end they send an offer and you want to negotiate a bit. You can say that this and this and this didn't turn out as you expected, or the responsibility is bigger, the scope is bigger than you imagined. So that's why you're pushing it towards the end of the top of your range. Obviously, don't go above your range that you announced in the first call at the end, because
I mean,
that was
I
one
guess
of the
there
other
may
things I
be.
changed from the draft.
Yeah, I would say that maybe one, if you're in the fortunate situation to have like 2 offers. You may be able to push this a little bit, but I think it's I
Yeah,
think you have to,
definitely. Yeah, Skido.
it is risky. And the thing I was trying to say is that, or thinking about trying to say is, depending on which country you're in, like I think like the US, like people get offers and then the offers are pulled. So
Yeah. Oh yeah.
you need to, you know, yeah, just be very careful on that.
Yeah, but also even if the offer is not pulled, most of the companies and most of the countries, they have some trial period. So yeah, maybe the offer stands, but you're fired on the first week because you can fire someone without any reason during the trial period most of the time.
Exactly.
So anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
be careful with. I will talk a lot about offer negotiation in the next and the last
Mm.
part of the series, so I don't want to go too deep into this. The point on this is that build a partnership with the recruiter and disclose your compensation range.
Yeah. Yeah. Really important.
And yeah,
Um,
I have a paragraph about the technical screening that I started. This is more for very big companies, fund companies, where they have this few technical screening questions where probably the recruiter, there's a good chance they don't understand the question deeply because it's not their expertise. Be very flexible, kind, and empathic with the recruiter. Don't be the smug know-it-all, creative answer giving kind of person because you're working against yours.
yeah.
Yeah,
I have a
I would
question
even
for
argue
you,
that
Peter,
as
on
an
the
engineering
giving.
manager, sorry, I just realized this is actually a good test of how you can talk about technical concepts to non-technical people. So actually, you're even inclined or motivated to
Yeah,
simplify a
exactly.
concept.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Super important. The
sorry,
thing I
go
was going
on.
to ask you was, um, there's been like, at least in the years before we kind of, there's been this big shift in the job market, and now it's an employer's market. But there was a lot of advice, especially for underrepresented minorities in tech, whether it's women or other people that
Yeah,
are from a sort of a underrepresented background, to not give a number of their salary, because it puts them in a disadvantageous position where the company knows what they're on. They might have been prepared to pay higher, but they can offer you a 10, 15%, 20% pay rise, but still be like, and then you enter into the company lower than your male colleagues, for example, and stuff. And I'm curious how you see things now, because that has been something, that a piece of advice that people are given. I'm curious what do you think about that
it's a good
now in the
point.
current climate?
It's a good point, and that's why originally I advised people to delay this discussion to be able to find out more about the
Mm.
company, about the job, and everything, and give a better number. Um, it doesn't fly now. Like I think all the playing area you have is in the range, and
Yeah.
you need to disclose even if it might be a disadvantage. I hope companies are getting more mature also, and more companies have more fixed salary bands. They don't want to build pressure by hiring someone with a lower or higher salary than their current staff. Also, there are more and more legislation that forces companies to disclose some kind of numbers. A lot of companies are abusing it or making it a joke, but still, the general trend is moving, or maybe I'm too optimistic, but it's moving towards this being less of an issue.
Yeah, I think like in some places they're publishing ranges and so on their side. But
Yeah.
I think I'd still, I have to say, I feel on this one, this is one that makes me sad, because this shift to the power being with the employer, and in parallel a lot of diversity and initiatives in
Yeah.
companies being kind of canned or like reduced and so on. It makes me really sad because it does feel like we're going backwards a few steps, and
Mm.
we're going to end up with the scenario where people are, like particularly women. I think like there's a lot of less women in tech, but women are being going to continue to be underpaid compared to their peers at the same level in a lot of companies. I mean, there's always going to be good companies that make an effort. I think the other thing that I worry about in the current climate that's related to this is women who come into tech and engineering from non-traditional and non-engineering backgrounds, but actually build up a great sense, become great engineering managers, are now penalized because on the technical side, they're not technical enough for the role when actually, um, maybe the best engineering managers don't need to program to achieve amazing results with the team and to be an amazing
Yeah,
multiplier. So
this
yeah,
would be my point to you. Like I agree, and there's this big risk, but I'm an optimistic. At the end of the day, I believe in diversity not because it's the socially the right thing to do. I don't believe in diversity because of correcting some injustice. I believe in diversity because I deeply believe that diverse teams are performing better, they are healthier, they
yeah,
bring more value to a company than non-diverse teams. So maybe I'm naively optimistic, but I think at the end of the day, those companies who are investing in diversity, who are investing in team health, who are investing in hiring managers who might be coming from a different background, but are very empathic and can build up a healthy team who is performing well, those companies are gonna have a better chance to succeed than those companies who are short-sightedly, I don't know, I'm exaggerating, but only hiring male engineers
yeah, yeah.
and EMs who can code. So
I
yeah,
I
I
agree
see
with
it's a
you,
risk, but on the long term, I think it's
but
gonna
it
come
just
out well.
dilutes the wave of change that we seem to be seeing in the market, because
Yeah,
now people can revert to less healthy teams. You get
true.
it's like a spring, we haven't reshaped all the biases in all of us and in society and whatever yet. And we were reshaping, or maybe it's like a mattress and it was reshaping, and then suddenly things moved, and the natural inclination is to bounce back to where it was.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
there's still a bunch
yeah, but
of people who don't know better.
exactly. But if you think about, I'm pretty sure you can come up some examples where these diversity programs they seemed a bit fake. Like they didn't explain the true value of diverse teams. They were just, oh yeah, we need I don't know 40% of women at least in leadership positions, or 50 or 60 or whatever, without
Yeah,
explaining and or without even living through the values of diversity. So yeah, those companies are likely to bounce back now, but still, my point is valid. They gonna be less successful than those companies who truly embrace the diverse team and
oh yeah,
what advantages come from it.
exactly. Yeah. Okay.
Cool, nice rabbit hole. Yeah, but
No, well,
uh,
yeah, I think that's,
and it's hard to
I, th-
argue these points because
yeah,
I mean let's state the obvious. We are privileged. This
yeah,
system is beneficial for us.
yeah, we
So
benefited. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but it is painful to give advice like this when you really don't want to. But I think the
very
reality
good
of the
point.
situation is you've got to answer these questions, and it's a buyer's market. you know.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard. It's hard, but it's not gonna make it easier by being pissed off about it.
No.
Hey there, future Peter here again from the editor's room. As I said in the beginning of the episode, we split this discussion to two parts. Coming up soon, the second part of our talk about various aspects of interviewing for an engineering manager position. See you soon. Bye.